Hey, what's up? This is Apple here. Guerrilla Group have recently released their FW18 lookbook and half of their collection, with the other half dropping at the end of September. This isn't a brand that I would normally do a lookbook or collection video for. Normally I only do acronym and ACG, but I thought for this season it's looking particularly strong, so I thought it was something that I wanted to focus on a little bit and pay a little bit more attention to, and I think it's something that you guys are really going to like as well. So we're going to start off with the first part of the collection, which has dropped already and is available on the website, and then go into the second part, which isn't available yet, but I have managed to get the product pictures for. But before I get into those individual pieces, I want to talk about the aesthetic generally, because part of the reason why I like this collection, part of the reason why I think it's so interesting, is because it seems like Guerrilla Group have taken a massive right turn and totally changed the way that they present their clothing and the way that their clothing is styled and the overall aesthetic of this stuff. Until now it's been very dystopian, very grungy, very cyberpunk, but now, by their own admission, we're looking more to movies like Alien and other 80s space kind of things for inspiration. You'll see that in the lookbook photography, you'll see that in the graphics that accompany this collection, and you'll see it in the overall aesthetic of the clothing themselves. And I think it's really important that Guerrilla Group have done that, because now more and more brands are taking very heavy inspiration or even copying from that tech ninja dystopian style that Guerrilla Group have used so much in the past. So with this style change, they've left their competitors and imitators in the dust doing their old stuff while they're on to something new. That in itself I think is pretty exciting and to be commended, but let's have a look at some of the individual pieces here. Some of the most interesting things from the first drop come in the form of the accessories, the bags. The AV01 has these holsters on each side on the front, and then a very small backpack on the back, complete with these crossed straps as well. It almost makes it look like a jacket sling, but it's not, it's just a set of bags. You've also got some dangling cords as well. I think this is a really nice take on the military tactical vest that's been quite popular recently, but obviously taken it in a very different direction, and certainly feels appropriate in this more sci-fi context that they're going for. I can also see some practicality here. Having two very accessible pockets on the front is pretty convenient, especially if you're wearing something which might not have that many pockets on. They have a few different colours, most notably for me this green-grey one, which is very much a motif throughout this collection, and it's a colour that they've not used that much in the past, but I think it looks really, really nice. It's got that lunar core, space age kind of vibe to it. Also in the lookbook, and presumably dropping in the second part of the collection, there is an apparition leather version of this bag. Apparition is a kind of translucent leather, which is a really interesting look. It's not something that I think anyone has really seen before. It looks a bit weird in the product picture, but I feel like that's not really doing it justice, because it looks way better in the lookbook, I think. So it's going to be one of those things where when you've got it in hand and when you're actually wearing it, it's going to look way cooler, and that unique translucency is really going to shine. They've also got the AV03, which they've released in previous collections, although a few new colorways this time. You'll also notice again in the lookbook, and teased very early in fact, there is an orange apparition leather and a natural colored version as well. Those will be dropping in the second drop. So again, that's something to look out for. I think the orange one looks super nice, so I'm really excited about that. In general though, I'm a fan of this shape, and I think it's something that's going to continue to work with this newer stuff, as well as with Guerrilla Group's older gear. You've also got the AV04, a little asymmetric holster. This I feel is going to operate like a smaller and more nimble version of the AV03, and that's definitely no bad thing. So for carrying the odd little thing, but with a very different style to your conventional side bag, this is going to be a really cool item, and again, working with that science fiction retro future styling. The AV02 is a tactical vest or gilet. This isn't my favourite piece in the collection. In general, I'm much more of a fan of zips over buttons, although you will find buttons being used much more in this collection than they have been previously and in techwear generally. The military influence is pretty strong here. I could see something very similar to this being put out by a brand like Carhartt or Maharishi. But that said, I think they do a very nice job in the lookbook of making this fit the new aesthetic. I'm getting some very strong spaceship crew member off-duty kind of vibes with this thing. There were a few clothing releases in this first drop, although it's certainly not their most exciting stuff. They've got a few hoodies with the new Guerrilla Group logo on. It's got that typical Guerrilla Group style with those unfinished inside-out seams, and the logo looks pretty nice. It's not exactly anything special though. If you've got a Guerrilla Group hoodie in the past, or you know what they look like, then you pretty much know what you're in for with these. They also have some tees with these Henley style buttons, although going along the side rather than straight down the middle. Although I prefer this to a standard Y-neck or Henley t-shirt, I'm not really a massive fan of them in general. I would prefer this if they didn't have the buttons on at all, but apart from that, I think they look pretty cozy, and I know this kind of style is the kind of undergarment that you would imagine or that you would see an 80s sci-fi crew member wearing. So I do get the reasoning, it's just not really for me. There's a few other long sleeve t-shirts as well. All of them have this asymmetrical sleeve detailing, so it looks like on one side you're wearing a long sleeve t-shirt underneath a t-shirt. It's kind of an interesting look. It reminds me of those grungy 90s skater kind of things. Again, it's not really something that I would go for, but it gives a little bit more interest compared to the other stuff that they've put out in the past and a lot of other things that are out there on the market. I do like the graphics though, they're pretty bang on for evoking that classic sci-fi imagery, and it's stuff that's different to the graphics that Guerrilla Group have come out with in the past. The second drop is where things start really getting exciting and where the jackets and the pants start coming into play. Honestly, I'm liking all of the jackets here. The JC01 is probably my favourite. It's got a nice length to it, it's got this stepped look that reminds me a bit of the Riot Division Lizard Parka, but in a very, very different style. This one has some Dyneema elements to it, which is a kind of ripstop material. They've got it on the hood, which gives it this silvery foil-like appearance, which you'll see used in some other techwear accessories and products, but I think this is going to look really nice. And in the context of this collection, that silver foil definitely reminds me of those big solar panels that you'll see attached to spaceships and the like in science fiction movies, and of course in the real world too. And again, this is another point that shows Guerrilla Group moving in a different direction, because this isn't a material that they've used before. There's a few cool small details on the JC01 that I like the look of as well. On the cuffs, instead of having Velcro or poppers, you've got zips to help adjust the fit there, which I think makes things look kind of nice. It reminds me of like a space age biker jacket. On the left arm of the jacket, there's this military inspired pocket, although it's tonal and it's not too bulky, so that gives it a little bit of sleekness compared to an equivalent arm pocketed jacket. And on that topic of sleekness, if you have a look on the back, there's this really nice, clean, sweeping hem, which just has quite a nice curve to it. The JC03 is a long length anorak. It's got a big zipped pocket on each side, as well as two big floating pockets with flaps on them. By themselves, I feel like these look a little bit plain, but when combined, as they do in the lookbook with the AV01, I think this makes for a really, really nice combo. You've got the long length of the anorak combining nicely with the low height of the bag. You've got those nice long vertical straps, which just seem to look really good with the long length of the jacket. Judging by the lookbook, this does appear to have some text on the back that might not be to everyone's taste. Personally, I think it's okay. It looks definitely less gratuitous than the Guerrilla Group text that's been on the back of their previous outerwear. And using text in this way, especially on jackets, gives it a bit of that space military standard issue kind of vibe, which is certainly appropriate in the context. The JC04 was again something that by itself looks a little bit plain for me. It's just too long and monolithic, but it's not quite as clean and as slim cut as an equivalent product from something like Valence. But in the lookbook, when styled with the apparition leather version of the AV03, again, that makes it look super nice because you've got something coming around the middle to break up that very long monolithic look, and that really does evoke that spaceman kind of thing. And although the sample image only has it with the hood up, in the lookbook they've got the hood down, and I think that makes it look much better because you can peel away part of the collar and then you've got this doubled up collar kind of look, and it makes the jacket look much more interesting on the top half than when the hood's kind of tightened up like that in the sample picture. The JJ01 for me is probably the jacket that evokes that science fiction space pilot crew member kind of look more than anything else. I can totally imagine someone with like a massive flamethrower just chewing through some aliens wearing one of these. The military vibes here of course are very strong, but keeping all of those pockets very centralized and having them asymmetrical, so where the jacket's undone you've got pockets on one side, no pockets on the other, give it a little bit of a unique twist compared to that standard issue military bomber jacket. Let's move on to the pants now. The PL01, I've got to be honest, are not my favourite pants from this collection, nor are they really my favourite from Guerrilla Group. As I said earlier, I'm not a massive fan of buttons, and this has got some real big buttons on it. I just can't unsee those pockets looking like really big faces. Of these two, the olive version is my favourite for sure. You can see that stitching and detailing a little bit better, and I can definitely imagine like an oil-stained version of these being worn by some spaceship crew member repairman on his hands and knees fixing some kind of weird pipe. The PL02 is a bit of a weird one for me. At the top of the pant, you've got these pleats which make it look quite smart, but then that's mixed with these really massive slouchy pockets. I think that's a bit of a weird combination. I'm not really feeling this one. The PL03 though feels to me like a much nicer version of that. You don't have those pleats in the top, but instead you've got this geometric angled pocket on one side, and that's combined with the very flat large pockets that are on the upper thigh. I think that's a much better combination in a similar kind of shape to the PL02. But I still feel like they have the ruggedness and the heavy duty appearance to go with these other science fiction military kind of things. And I think more tactical or military inspired clothing in general could be a good combination here. The PL04 is another one that I'm not 100% on. I don't really feel like this fits the look of the rest of the collection. This feels a lot more like old Guerrilla Group to me, but doubling down on those traditional Guerrilla Group hallmarks. Like the extended straps, here they're really extended, and you've got that really big variance between the very tight cuffs and then the very, very baggy upper thigh. And it has the frayed stitching, which is very typical of mid-layer Guerrilla Group pieces. Yeah, overall I just feel like it's not that cohesive with the rest of the series. It doesn't have that same new approach that everything else seems to. So it seems like a bit of an outlier in this collection, and I'm not a massive fan of it for that reason. The PL05 though looks a bit like a reimagined version of the PL03 from previous collections. It's got the cropped shape, it's got the taper there, it's got that nice belt, although everything has been changed and altered a little bit to make it different and fit better with this new stuff. I really like it. I think the super exaggerated pleats are very cool. I think the styling of the belt looks awesome. It's got a nice crop to it. I'm always a fan of a cropped techwear pant, and they just look comfy, and there's nothing worse than wearing uncomfy pants. And unless I've missed one somewhere, that is every piece in the FW18 Guerrilla Group collection. I've kind of already done my conclusion at the start of this video, talking about their overall aesthetic, changing their direction, and having this new stuff which is all very cohesive, and experimenting with some new ideas like the apparition leather and the Dyneema elements on some of those jackets. It's always a risk with a clothing brand to change the overall feel, but I feel like Guerrilla Group have done this really successfully here, and that's really why I like this collection so much overall. I feel like they've got some references to their older stuff. I feel like if you look at it, you can still kind of tell that it's Guerrilla Group, but at the same time, the new inspiration of this science fiction 1980s alien stuff, Ridley Scott and all that, is very, very evident here. It's clear that they've used some inspiration and taken it along with their own designs and their own ideas and made that into something new, and I think that's something that's quite admirable. Guerrilla Group has always been a fairly expensive brand, and that continues to be the case here. The bags that have already been released range between $230 and $280, that kind of price range, which of course is no small asking price, but at least now they've taken this new direction and there aren't these imitation brands which do very similar things at a cheaper price. You've got more of a reason, and it's easier to justify paying those high prices for this stuff. So overall, my top 5 here in no particular order are the AV01, the AV04, the AV03 in that new apparition leather, the JC01, the JJ01, and for a number 6, the PL05 as well. But for me overall, this is a collection with far more hits than misses, and that's why I wanted to talk about it in a little bit of detail. But of course, the one question remains, which is, if you were going to pick up one of these things, if you had to pick out a favourite, which one would you go for? Let me know down there in the comments, and of course if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like. But that's all for this one, so thank you so much for watching, and of course, as always, I will see you in the next video. Shout out to Artie's OP, definitely going to get on that feature-length video at some point, 1.5 hour techwear reviews, it's coming. And shout out to Ethan, I've not seen any, so there's definitely a gap in the market there. Need some tech cats out there, roaming the streets, yeah. Thanks for making it to the end of this video. If you want to catch some more stuff, there'll be links going up there so you can check out some more videos. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then definitely consider doing so. It's super helpful. All you got to do is hit one of those little subscribe buttons and then you'll be subscribed forever.